We stood there looking at each other. Like Sheila said, this was the end. I turned to Dina Wentworth. I'm sorry. We didn't mean to cause any trouble. I was the one who started it, Guy said. I'll take this easel back to the art place, and we'll forget about the whole thing. No, said Mrs. Wentworth. Her face was tight with tension. You kids keep right on. It's for a good cause. We'll discuss it at the merchants' meeting next week, as I'd planned. Excuse me, said a soft voice behind us. It belonged to a beautiful Asian woman dressed in dark green. Hello, Molly, Dina said. She turned to us. Have you met the owner of poor Polly's pantry? This is Molly Wing. She introduced each one of us, and Molly smiled nervously. I'm very pleased to meet you, she said. I was just supervising the men who were putting up my sign when I heard someone shouting. Sheila spoke up. It was an old man, she explained, a street person from town. He was threatening us with friends of his who are gang members. The problem has been taken care of, Sheila, said Mrs. Wentworth quickly. His kind are full of bluster, but are actually quite harmless. Molly nodded. I don't mind panhandlers. It's the gangs I'm afraid of. I don't think we need to worry about gangs, Molly. Dina Wentworth said in a soothing voice. In the 6 years I've been here, we've never had that kind of trouble. But they're spreading out, Molly said, worried. When things get too hot for them in the big city, they move to the suburbs, where the forces aren't so strong, and they never forget a vendetta. A what? Asked Sheila. A vendetta. Vengeance against someone who has offended them. How do they get revenge? Asked Cammy. Mostly vandalism, Molly said. Unless they are very angry. Then they'll use pipe bombs and even drive-by shootings. I think one gang may still have a vendetta against me. Really? Cammy's eyes grew big. Why? Asked Guy. Because I refused to pay them protection. Instead, I told the police. The gang leader was arrested, but vowed vengeance once he was free. That's why I moved my store. I really don't think that we'll have that kind of problem here, Mrs. Wentworth said earnestly. That seemed to close the conversation. Molly drifted back to her store. Mrs. Wentworth took her recorder and phoned back to her office. Sheila went to Mother Brown's, and Guy and Cammy and I took our places at the gazebo. But no matter how expertly Cammy played her fast songs, no matter how often I sketched Guy's portrait in the hope of drawing more business, and no matter how well Guy juggled, we didn't get a single client the rest of the afternoon. Well, we might as well quit for the day, Cammy said sadly. She loosened her bow and put her violin away. I'm going over to wait for Dad in his shop. By the way, Guy said casually, where is God in all of this? Without waiting for an answer, he picked up the easel and the poster board and trudged off toward Hamlet Daycare. Gotta pray for him, I reminded Cammy. Yeah, want to do it now? And we bowed our heads right there. As Cammy and her violin disappeared into Century Antiques, I was alone with my sketchbook. I decided to go to my favorite hideout. Up near the highway, just west of Mother Brown, stood a bright red double-decker London bus. It was just like the ones they used in London, but it had actually been driven in Victoria, British Columbia. A lady named Mrs. Melba had bought it cheap the day it had been delivered to a junkyard. Somehow she managed to get it down to Country Hamlet, where she repainted it. She took out all the seats and put in display shelves. filling them with little English figurines, like bobbies and Buckingham Palace guards. You like my bus? Mrs. Melba asked me her first day here. I'd been hanging around it admiringly. Come in and look around. I'd climbed the little double step at the back and walked through the folding wooden door. Just beyond the door was a metal spiral staircase that led to the second deck. Where does the driver sit? I had asked. I'll show you. She took me to the front of the bus, and I peered through the little black leather seat positioned behind a steering wheel. How does the driver get in there? Not from here, she told me, from outside. You see, the driver of a London bus doesn't have to take money. All he has to do is drive. London buses have conductors who stand at the back by the door and take the fares. Come outside with me and I'll show you how the driver gets in. Pulling open a drawer, Mrs. Melba took out a little door handle. We went outside and she led me up to the driver's tiny door, which was hidden by some bushes. She fitted the door handle into a slot and turned it, and the door swung out. Up you go, she said, and boosted me on to the black leather seat. That was 3 years ago. For weeks afterward, I pestered her, asking her to let me sit in the driver's seat. Pretty soon she got tired of fetching the handle for me and showed me a little shelf in the wheel well where I could put it. Since then, the driver's seat had been the place I'd go when I wanted to be alone. It faced the hamlet so I could see pretty much what went on there. And since Mrs. Melba had placed large advertising posters in the windows with pictures of Buckingham Palace guards on them, nobody could really see inside. So this afternoon I carried my sketchbook to the London bus, found the hidden door handle, and climbed up inside. A lot of things were bothering me. Guy's sarcasm of Christianity, for one thing. I closed my eyes and prayed for Guy. Then I did some doodling in my sketchbook as the afternoon wore on. I even dozed a little. What woke me up was the rumbling of the cruisers. I jerked awake and looked at my watch. 6:30. Almost time to go to ye old bookstore and see if Mom was ready to go home. The shops had all closed at 6. Funny, I thought to myself. They're early. The cruisers were what Hamlet merchants called a group of teenagers who liked to drive their cars along the horseshoe-shaped street that curved between the shops. This long loop was the perfect place for the teens to rumble their engines and call loudly to one another, or to sit in the gazebo and drink Slurpees and beer. And here they came, one by one, in their polished old cars, with the rumbly engines gliding up beside the gazebo. I heard the thunk thunk of car doors and some laughter. I hope Dina Wentworth has gone home, I thought to myself. She despised the cruisers because of the litter and beer cans they left lying around. Time and time again she mentioned that she was going to call the sheriff, but she hadn't yet. They might retaliate, she would sigh, so I probably shouldn't rile them. But if they get any worse, I'll have to do something. A movement at the corner of my eye caught my attention. Across the highway walked Sheila's brother Tony, the boy who'd gotten off the bus with her Monday afternoon. He was heading toward Mother Brown's, but when he saw the cruisers, he drifted over to look at their cars. I saw him start talking to one of the teens. The teen opened the hood of his car, and Tony bent down to look. Suddenly, everyone turned and looked in the direction of the highway. And then I saw why. A white sheriff's car was gliding smoothly into Country Hamlet.